All right, welcome to the Dales Report, and happy to be joined with the CEO of Atai Life Sciences, Florian Brand, to the show. Florian, how are things?
Good. Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, we've been chasing you for a while. We finally have you on. How's life been this year? If you could put into one word, both personally and professionally, launching this company, what would it be?
Certainly exciting. So we have made incredible progress, achieved a very important milestone for us with the IPO this year in June, really leading to a very, very strong balance sheet, cash position of $450 million that really enable us now to execute on our current pipeline, our current programs, 11 drug development programs that we have ongoing, but also enable us to remain very active on the BD side, so business development activities. So yeah, very fortunate to be in this position to really make a meaningful leap forward for all the mental health patients that have that suffer and don't yet have the adequate treatments available.
Yeah, well, congrats, and it's been incredible. There was much anticipation in the overall industry waiting for you to go public, which you did back in June. But before we get into research, numbers, and growth, I'd like to first learn about how this whole company was put together. Can you kind of walk us through the synergies that you, Christian Agermeyer, and Lars Wild have in common to put this all together? Because it's a monumental feat with what you've accomplished so far.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it all goes back, and we shouldn't forget Srini, our scientific co-founder, who joined us shortly after the initiation of Atai. But I think it's important to allude to the personal dimension, the personal experiences with mental health disorders, seeing friends and family members suffer. And I'm not sure if Lars was on your show already, but he is certainly very open about his mental health journey. And basically, when we were building another company called Spring Lane together, that Christian was an investor in, kind of I witnessed him going through this very typical and distressing mental health patient journey, suffering from depression and not finding any help or healing in the standard of care, and basically in the psychotherapy or the pharmaceutical options. And it was actually Christian that then pointed him to the therapeutic potential of psilocybin, based on the studies that he came across at Johns Hopkins and Imperial, and that led then to the very profound experience of Lars, and ultimately in us getting involved, Lars partnering with George and Katya from Compass, Peter Thiel, Christian, and then Atai providing the capital to research psilocybin to produce the data. And the phase 2B has been wrapped up recently, and we're all awaiting the data by end of this year of the TRD trial from Compass.
Well, let's get into the research in a little bit. I do want to talk about numbers. You announced yesterday, you put out your second quarterly earnings earlier this week, which was loaded with operational highlights across several therapeutic verticals, the highlight of which is the company's phase 2 initiation of compound PCN-101, which is a parental formulation of R-ketamine with the potential to be competitive to Johnson & Johnson FDA-approved esketamine treatment, SPR-A-Vado, for depression overall. So do you think the market is beginning to recognize the value of your research portfolio?
I believe, the IPO in itself was already a great moment of validation of investor interest in the very diversified pipeline that we have built over the last 3 years. Perception is certainly very, very exciting, as a potentially kind of one of the first rapid acting antidepressants with a target product profile to be administered at home. So that's very exciting. We're very excited to initiate the phase 2 still in this quarter. But ultimately, we have seen a great response, and we believe this is deeply rooted in the significant unmet need in mental health, as you're well aware. So we haven't seen any true leap forward for patients since decade in this field, and made great progress on the scientific side. The regulators seem to be very receptive by looking at the breakthrough therapy designations that were given to MAPS and Compass, and then ultimately also the approval of Spravato was very encouraging. So I think all those factors together put us in a very, very unique position to really make a difference here for patients that, again, haven't seen true innovations coming to market to patients for too long.
Do you think, are you impressed with the overall awareness and growth of the industry over the past, say, 12 months? And where do you think we go from here over the next 12?
The next 12 months?
Yeah.
So certainly, what's interesting to see is that also more strategic players,
Yep.
large pharmaceutical companies, get involved. I mean, we talked about J&J with Spravato esketamine, which is kind of a psychedelic-like compound, if you want. Ketamine, kind of the root molecule here, but also our partnership collaboration with Otsuka on the perception level, I think alludes to an interest of large pharmaceutical companies in the compounds that we're researching, and we're very happy with that partnership, and intend also to look more into kind of these kind of strategic collaborations to actually capture the value that we are generating next to, and generally, developing those compounds through the stages ourselves. And I think that's a testament to, I guess, how the mental health industry evolves. I think it's important that we perceive ourselves not as a psychedelics company, but more as a mental health company with a very broad, diversified portfolio, also with very interesting non-psychedelic compounds that are equally exciting for us.
Right. Well, one thing that is front and center and grabs, let's face it, a lot of interest with investors is your cash position, currently sitting at US $453.6 million as of June 30th, which is by far the largest cash position to anyone in the sector, hands down. Even booked, and I thought this is impossible for companies to do at this stage of the game, but produced revenue of $19.9 million, even though most peers are currently in pre-revenue stage. So what type of reassurances does this strong cash position give to investors, given that you have room to advance so many clinical trials within your pipeline?
Yeah, to your point, I mean, it puts us into the position to actually execute our current pipeline. So basically to move those compounds through the clinical trials, to produce the data, to convince the FDA and ultimately payers to reimburse those treatments once approved. So we have, with the current pipeline, already 18 near-term catalysts that we aim to or anticipate to achieve over the next 18 months. So significant news flow, quite a density of news coming up over the next foreseeable future. With Compass Pathways, we briefly talked about them, expecting a readout by end of this year, as well as Recognify, where we also have a phase 2A study going on, also anticipating data by end of this year. So within the kind of those funds kind of really allow us to kind of drive value here, ultimately for patients, to demonstrate and generate the data that is needed here to drive these through the pipeline, but also puts us in a very strong position to remain very active on the business development side of things, which was already a key part of our operating model. So to basically incubate, acquire, and invest in very differentiated mental health treatments.
You said Compass Pathways, and I'd like to learn more of that. Many retail investors really don't comprehend your relationship with them, which equated to a 19.7% equity interest, or around 8 million shares as of May 4th, 2021. Both companies also share the backing of major investor Christian Agermeyer. So do you have any formal or informal working ties with Compass, or are they just simply a passive minority stakeholder?
So there's, I would say, a deep history that kind of we share with Compass. I mentioned Lars' history, and we have been a very active investor in their series, like leading their Series A, Series B, the crossover round back in the days, I think, together with Otsuka and Perceptive. So have been a kind of a long history of supporting that company. But indeed, to your point, right now, it's a strategic investment of ours. So there's no operational involvement, given that Compass itself IPO'd in September, which is one potential way for us in general to also capture the value that we have been generating, while we kind of going forward rather focus on strategic partnerships with the one that we discussed, Otsuka, or actually develop those substances ourselves until approval.
You touched on your leading compound, which is ketamine, for treatment-resistant depression earlier, currently heading into a phase 2 trial. It's the most advanced in your company's portfolio. However, you also have at least 6 other phase 2 studies planned or under development. So can you give investors some rough timelines of which psychedelic compound you expect to emerge next and when you think it might go to trial?
So to your point, we have it's a well diversified pipeline. So that's also part of our unique approach. So multiple shots on goal, kind of to really avoid this the risk that a one or two asset biotech company faces. And they are indeed at multiple stages, and all of them have in common the non-psychedelic and psychedelic compounds that we've seen prior evidence in humans. So that means basically that we have a clear safety profile,
right?
At least anecdotal evidence that they're meaning that anecdotal evidence that they're efficacious, meaning at least signals that point to efficacy in humans. And the two more advanced ones are about to enter phase 2, or are already in the phase 2, like Recognify, or also Compass Pathways. And we have a kind of a large number kind of approaching phase 1 stage over the next month or years to come, so that we aim kind of to, over the next 2, 3, 4 years, to have many clinical stage assets in development.
Are you happy with, you went public back in mid-June on the NASDAQ, the prices hovered in around the IPO range in which you launched. As far as the trials that are progressing and obviously the awareness amongst investors with the company, are you happy so far with how things have progressed in the first 2 months?
Ultimately, absolutely. So again, the IPO allowed us to really focus on execution. I think we have assembled this pipeline with the goal to really develop more effective treatments and to generate the data, again, to demonstrate that kind of those formerly vilified and stigmatized compounds can play an essential role in the mental health care. So with that, we're in a very good position, and hence absolutely glad to see how things are progressing so far.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this industry does perform as we head into Q4 with a lot of the research results, the Compass plans. A lot of people I've spoken to in this space are very optimistic. They think a strong finish to Q4. I can't think that you would probably agree with that, would you not?
We're anticipating absolutely those data to read out. I think it will be a catalyst for the entire, if you want to call it, psychedelic industry. I think that's kind of the phase 2 data from Compass will be significantly, I would say, and they are definitely anticipated and will catalyze a lot of attention to the space.
One thing I wanted to ask last is, and it's an important one, was about your Atai Foundation. You've launched a nonprofit initiative to address the global mental health crisis outside of your profit model. So what the model is that you offer your employees the opportunity to spend 1% of their working hours annually volunteering with charities or nonprofits aligned with the More Needs to Be Done program, and pledges to donate up to 1% of future corporate profits when applicable. So first off, well done. And secondly, what would you say is the foundation's main initiative in relation to the current mental crisis that we're enduring across the world?
Right. So we really started the Atai Foundation with the aim, I guess, with 3 general objectives. So one is ensure access to those therapies once they are approved. So once we have demonstrated that they're safe and efficacious, and hopefully also reimbursed by payers. And second, to educate, and that's in general to fund research, but also to ensure that kind of the next generation of neuro innovators are trained at institutions that do research in this field, so PhDs, etc. And also to educate the public, given that those substances and mental health itself is still very stigmatized. So that's important to us to kind of educate and help to destigmatize mental health disorders in general, and also point to the very kind of rigorous scientific process that is going on to allude to the potential therapeutic use of psychedelics. So these are both areas there on the education part. And then lastly, on the ecosystem support, we're exploring ways how on the reciprocity side, but also in general on the to optimize our environmental footprint.
Right.
Given that we work with naturally derived substances, so here we are really kind of focused on ecological aspects, but in general ecosystem support in general. So this is kind of a nutshell version of what we're doing, and we're hoping to share some news very soon on the activities that we're planning and we'll do there with the Atai Foundation in the future.
Well, I applaud everything that you and your team are doing. It's been an incredible feat so far as you definitely establish yourself as an industry leader. And the great thing is that we're just getting started and obviously providing opportunity and solutions for people as we, obviously deal with the global pandemic right now and a mental crisis that's happening across the world. But listen, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and I appreciate you connecting with us here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Florian.